Good morning, everyone. My name is Victoria Samson. I'm the Washington Office Director of the Secure World Foundation. I'd like to welcome you to the third and final day of AMOS 2021. Thank you for your patience earlier. Our keynote speaker had a little bit difficulty in logging on. This is the world we live in now. Nothing is ever perfect, and she will be doing her keynote via phone. So you get to listen to her and all her fantastic speaking, but it'll be a really great presentation. Carine Claeys is presently the acting European External Action Service Special Envoy for Space and head of the European External Action Service Space Task Force, set up in 2015. In that capacity, she advises the EAS Secretary General on all space matters of European Union interest, and she chairs the board of the EU Satellite Center and the ad hoc GNSS Security Experts Group. From 2011 and 2015, she was responsible for the processes in setting up the new EAS. Before that, she served in the General Secretary Council of the European Union and has worked in several sectors of the administration for many years as a diplomat, various aspects including energy, human rights, United Nations, drugs, terrorism, and agriculture. So we're very lucky to have her here today to talk about norms behavior. Carine, you've got the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and awfully sorry to only be able to intervene with, via phone without image. This is one of the technology issues that can happen in online meetings, I'm afraid. I'm very honored to be present online in this conference and to, as I understood, replace Mr. Chirac-Parik, Executive Secretary of the National Space Council, as the keynote speaker of this session. I would like to say a few words about space security and about the role of the EU and the opinion of the EU on those important issues. Let me first start with asking myself, what does space security actually mean? It is not such an easy question, in fact. Let me first mention that the simple word security is often confusing, even more so in an international environment using several languages. You will indeed be aware, or I hope you will, that security and safety are concepts that are distinct one from the other, but not in all languages. Very often they are covered by one single word. And in two languages that are very often used in the European Union, English and French, they are what we call false friends. Security being translated by sûreté, and safety being translated by sécurité. So not that easy. Let me thus clarify, although very roughly. Security in outer space, particularly, is related to intentional threats. It is linked with the stability of the space environment. It is dealt with in the United Nations framework by the disarmament and non-proliferation community and bodies under the UN General Assembly First Committee in New York and Geneva. Safety, on the contrary, is considered unintentional risks, natural hazards, space debris. Safety is usually considered together with sustainability and is dealt with in the UN framework by the space community, especially the COPUOS, the Committee for the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, supported by the UNOSA, the Office for Outer Space Affairs, under the UN General Assembly Fourth Committee. This means New York, of course, for the UNGA, and Vienna this time. Let me mention in this framework also how quite a lot of space and defense technologies are interlinked, because space is essentially and in essence dual. Our daily life is increasingly dependent on space technology. Most of the time, those are invisible and transparent. The digital economy, the fourth industrial revolution, agriculture, transport, across the transport modes, land, water, air, fishing, energy, finance, urban development, telecommunication, environmental monitoring, and the broad security chain from civil protection to security and defense are amongst the space-reliant sectors, and therefore sectors that are vulnerable should space assets be at risk. As highlighted in a very nicely worded expression coming from Washington, D.C., space is, and I quote, increasingly contested, congested, and competitive. It is indeed no longer limited to a handful of state actors and has never been as crowded and adversarial as today. Operators start to launch constellation of hundreds or thousands of satellites with a short lifetime, thereby increasing the risk of collision and potentially creating additional space debris. The scenario defined by NASA scientist Donald G. Kessler in the 70s becomes increasingly risky, according to which the density of space objects is high enough that collisions between them could result in a cascade effect and impede access to space for many generations. Moreover, new missions such as active debris removal or on-orbit servicing include the ability to rendezvous or proximity operations with other space objects and even the ability to move them. Such new technologies could potentially be used for interferences and offensive actions. Furthermore, operations undertaken to remove debris might be understood or misunderstood as hostile actions vis-à-vis other space objects. In addition, although space tools have always been used also for military purposes, space tools being, as I said, dual by nature, similarly to any other key infrastructure, there is an increasing risk of weaponization of outer space. Space assets are therefore indeed at risk. This means that our economy, our security, and our daily life are vulnerable. There are two ways essentially to ensure the security of space. And those are the essence of my work as Special Envoy for Space in the European Union. First, the operational part. The EU's ability to react in the case of a threat to the UN space assets. And this is the case, of course, for other space powers. I will not elaborate on this, as this is not the subject of the discussion today, although it could indeed be interesting in another forum to continue this discussion on the collaboration between allies on the matter. Next to this operational role, there are also possibly policy and diplomatic actions for which the European Union fully applies its DNA, that is multilateralism. Indeed, space is a responsibility as well as a dream and an ambition. Space is a global common. It requires global rules for the benefit of all, not only for the present spacefaring nations. More needs to be done in an inclusive and responsible manner, beyond the traditional geopolitical mistrust. The EU continuously promotes the preservation of a safe, secure, and sustainable space environment, and the peaceful use of outer space on an equitable and mutually acceptable basis. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty and other international legal instruments developed in the framework of the United Nations remain the cornerstone of the global governance of outer space. Transparency and confidence-building measures are also provide an important contribution to the security, safety, and sustainability of activities in outer space. As I said earlier, activity in the UN framework happens in two silos, which don't meet very often, except once every 2 years, with a joint meeting of the UNGA First and Fourth Committees regarding outer space. There has been undeniable progress the last 3 years in both silos after years of stagnation. And this is far from meaning that all issues are solved. It will still take a lot of time and a lot of efforts. In 2019, the UN COPUOS adopted the Preamble and the 21 long-term sustainability guidelines for outer space activities. And this was confirmed, although with some nitty-gritty but frightening hiccups, by the UN General Assembly. Something the EU and its member states supported and welcomed. We are very happy that this year, the 5 years working group under agenda item, the LTS of outer space activities in the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee, will be able to initiate fruitful discussion after the procedures and the composition of the Bureau have been solved in the margins of the meeting of COPUOS plenary in August and September this year. Sharing experience, practices and lessons learned from implementing the adopted guidelines, raising awareness and capacity building, and possibly considering new challenges for the long-term sustainability of outer space activities will be on the table in this framework and will certainly be very, very useful. In the disarmament community also, there has been some important progress despite strong opposition from the Russian Federation and China. The UK initiated in the summer last year a new initiative which materialized in a UNGA resolution, Resolution 7536, on reducing space threats through norms, rules, and principles of responsible behavior that was adopted by the UNGA with a very strong majority, 150 yes, with only 12 no's and 8 abstentions. This resolution calls for a common understanding on how best to act to reduce threats to space systems in order to maintain outer space as a peaceful, safe, stable, and sustainable environment, free from an arms race and conflict, for the benefit of all. It invites member states of the United Nations and observers to inform about their respective national space security policies, strategies, or doctrines. It encourages member states to study existing and potential threats and security risks to space systems, including those arising from actions, activities, or systems in outer space or on Earth, to characterize actions and activities that could be considered responsible, irresponsible, or threatening, and their potential impact on international security, and to share their ideas on the further development and implementation of norms, rules, and principles of responsible behaviors, and on the reduction of risks of misunderstanding and miscalculations with respect to outer space, and request the UN Secretary General to seek the views of the UN member states on these issues and submit a substantive report to the UN General Assembly 76, meaning this year, in 2021. The EU, as well as several of the EU member states, have contributed to this report that has now been issued by the Secretary General. And our UK friends are considering tabling a new draft resolution, among others, calling for the setting up of an open-ended working group with a view to ensure proper inclusiveness in this progress. This is really the beginning of a process of common understanding, of transparency and confidence building, to which the EU and its member states grant their full support. And you will certainly hear from David Edmondson very soon on the subject, much more during the panel. Allow me, as concluding remarks to this keynote speech, to underline the necessary link between the purely space community and the non-proliferation disarmament community on the topic of conduct in outer space. Transparency and confidence building measures that are established for the peaceful use of outer space are also useful to avoid miscalculation and misperception, and therefore in avoiding an arms race in outer space. The joint meetings of the first and the fourth committee of the UNGA every other year are therefore very, very useful, as well as the diplomatic efforts both in the space community and in the disarmament community. In the same vein, I launched in September 2019 a public diplomacy campaign on safety, security, and sustainability in outer space, called the 3SOS campaign. Outer space is a global common, says the Outer Space Treaty. It should be preserved for the use and the benefit of humankind at present and in future generations. This is an increasingly challenging goal, as outer space, as was, and I said it, indicated in a former paper from the other side of the Atlantic, from your side of the Atlantic, if I may say so, increasingly congested, contested, and competitive. A common understanding and common efforts at worldwide level are needed to act swiftly, and that is the second meaning of 3SOS. It is urgent to act swiftly and to act jointly for a safe, secure, and sustainable outer space. We can also add for a stable outer space, more linked to security, of course. The 3SOS campaign aims at building that common understanding by raising the awareness of all potential actors, policymakers, industry, think tanks, academia, scientific community, or the general public. I know that the Secured World Foundation is very, very active with the same kind of idea in mind. Our motto is indeed, let us work together for a safe, secure, and sustainable use of outer space for the benefit of all, today and for future generations. This will be it, Victoria, for now, and I'm open for questions if there are any in the audience.
Thank you very much, Carine. That was wonderful. We did start a little bit late, but I've been given the nod to go a little bit over, so just a few questions. The first one I wanted to ask you, Carine, was I thought your distinction between security and safety was really interesting, and essentially it seems it comes down to intent, whether one intends to do harmful interference. And I'm curious to know, how do you determine intent in space? Is this where norms of behavior come in, or how do we get to that point where we can understand other actors' intentions? Thank you.
I'm not sure I heard the parts of your question. You were referring to first the distinction between safety and security, and
yes.
then asking how we could know other actors' intention. Is that what you were requesting, Victoria? Sorry, but the phone call is not always very easy.
No, that's exactly it. Thank you. That's what I was asking.
Okay. So, of course, when I say that the difference between safety and security is in the fact that one is intentional and the other is not, that does not mean that we need to know the intention in order to act. I think that this is a proof, one more, that confidence building and transparency measures can be useful in both cases, because the building transparency and confidence in or versus unintentional measures can also help in identifying intentional actions. This is the reason why, for instance, defining norms for responsible or irresponsible behavior is, according to us in the EU, a very important element. That it is easier to start from the behavior itself instead of having an in-depth analysis on the intention which is behind it, because the intention does not always is not always clear from the very, very beginning. So one of the big advantages, shall I say, if I may say so, of the UK initiative of last year, which will be continued this year, is to focus on the behavior. And this, I think, is the right way forward, and is the reason why the EU is absolutely online and supporting this initiative.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Are European Union countries in agreement about how to deal with security threats?
Yes, there is an agreement in the European Union on how to treat security threats, essentially in the multilateral fora. Both, as I said, in the space community and in the disarmament community. However, you know that we have some member states that are space powers and others not, and that some of our member states are willing and have declared so to defend their space assets when and if needed, or at least to prepare themselves to be able to defend their space assets if and where needed. Not all member states, of course, do share that intention, because not all of them are fully implied in and fully space powers. However, there is a consensus on the need to be active on the multilateral fora. There is an acceptance of the position of various of the space-faring nations of the EU. And we have also agreed to give to the EU, in particular to the Council of the EU and to the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security, the tools in order to be able to give those two institutions the possibility to act should the assets of the EU be at risk. It is a repetition of task which has been agreed by the Council of the EU, and you can see as a proof the adoption of a Council decision this year, in May this year, Council Decision 698, which gives that responsibility to the Council and to the High Representative in the case of an urgency. And my team is putting that decision and implementing it, and at the disposal of the Council and the High Representative to do so.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think we're out of time, but please join me in thanking Carine Claeys for stepping up and doing a fantastic keynote. Thank you very much, Carine.